Welcome to the Maybe Baby Diaries podcast. I'm your host, Mariah Montgomery. Here we'll discuss all things infertility like heartbreak, joy, growth, loss, and the wild, crazy journey that it is. Let's bring awareness, education, and understanding to the table. You aren't alone. Together, we've got this. Katie, welcome back to the podcast 2 weeks in a row.
I know. Thanks, Mariah. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. Today we're going to talk about nutrition still, but we're going to shift things around. But in case you didn't listen to last week's podcast episode and you are new to everything, Katie, can you tell us about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a mom. I have 2 sons, and then I'm also a registered nurse that has experience in labor and delivery and postpartum, and then now in the outpatient, like at a large OBGYN office. And then I teach childbirth classes, and then I'm also a becoming certified in prenatal nutrition. I'm very close to being done with that. And yeah, so that's kind of my professional resume, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's great.
Thanks.
So last week we touched on nutrition and using nutrition to heal from a miscarriage and from a loss. Mm-hmm. And today we're going to be shifting a little bit and talking about using nutrition to aid in your fertility journey.
Yes. So if you are been trying to conceive for a while, maybe a lot of places, they want you to try for at least a year, right? Before they refer you to a fertility doctor and kind of go from there. That's what I hear anyways. And so maybe you've been trying for 6 months and you want to help yourself, right? To conceive on your own, or maybe you're past that point and you are taking fertility medications or IUI or IVF, and nutrition can be very supportive along each of those journeys. Because they're all kind of related, right? We're trying to conceive, but also for there to be, a healthy endometrium for the embryo to implant, and then for your body to sustain that pregnancy. So yeah, there's a lot of little tips and tricks that can help with that. So for instance, a big one would be, you want to think of your body as like a home for your baby, right? And so your body will recognize if it's not quite, the home isn't quite ready. So if you're very deficient in a lot of micronutrients, if you're not eating enough calories every day, or if there's a lot of inflammation, then sometimes that makes it harder for you to conceive, because your body is not, it's not very receptive for that. So the first thing would be trying to, if there are any deficiencies, trying to correct that. And you may not know, there are some labs that you can get done. But many people just start taking a prenatal vitamin, when you're thinking of starting to conceive. But you can also, start implementing more fresh fruits and vegetables in your diet, and, consider those things as well. That's kind of a whole other talk going into each vitamin and nutrient that, and what foods. It's very in depth, but it's just something to consider if you haven't done that already. But more like vaguely, like broadly, reducing the inflammation in your body. And one of the main sources of inflammation is blood sugar dysregulation. So that's when we're having these big spikes in our blood sugar, and then usually a big drop over a short amount of time after a spike. Excuse me. I have a frog in my throat, apparently. So So trying to eat foods that are more supportive of a more stable blood sugar, things lower on the glycemic index, trying to lessen these refined sugars in your diet, sugary drinks, sugary treats. It's okay to treat ourselves, but it's just if we're doing it multiple times a day, every single day, that's where we're getting this like chronically, our blood sugar is spiking, right? And if we're eating, our meals are more carb heavy and aren't balanced with fiber and fat and protein, then we're getting these spikes. And when we eat the carbs with fiber, fat, and protein, it lessens the spike. It's more of like a plateau, right? Instead of this big, like giant spike up. And so when we're getting these like chronic spikes, what can happen is insulin resistance. And many people already have this related to other health conditions like PCOS, which is, often related with fertility stuff. So something to consider if you already are just naturally having some insulin resistance. And this is something you may even want to focus even more so on. But that insulin resistance, it leads to that more spikes in your blood sugar, more inflammation. It's kind of like this vicious cycle. And what can happen with that is it can affect ovulation and also egg quality or egg health, which is, directly related to what you're trying to hear.
Yeah.
So just, looking at your plate and seeing, what do I have on here that is carb? And do I have anything on my plate that will balance that carb out? Or is there a different carb I could switch this one on my plate out for, like a big fluffy white roll, or can I switch that out for more of like a whole grain option or sourdough or something like that? That would be a little bit nicer to my blood sugar.
Yeah. I had a question for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned inflammation a couple times. Can you talk about what that is and how that can negatively impact infertility?
Right. So inflammation, you think of it as like, I think of it as like a brick wall, right? And so when we've got these like beautiful, perfect, right out of the factory bricks that are lined up and like perfect, that's like, none of us are perfect, right?
Yeah.
But when it's inflamed, I think of like the edges of that brick or the corners of the brick are starting to kind of crumble a little bit. Maybe they're not fitting together as nicely as they could. And that's kind of our cells in our body. And so our cells don't work optimally when we've got this inflammation and this kind of breakdown of our cells. So inflammation can be caused by many things. One of them is the blood sugar I was talking about, but there's, other things like if you eat dairy and you're on the toilet the rest of the day, that's inflammatory to your body, right? So that's probably, some of it's just like innate person to person. Are there certain foods that you don't tolerate that's causing inflammation in your body? What else? And then like omega-6s, that was going to be my next little topic. So when we're talking about fats in our diet, and a lot of people hear about omega-3s, which are in like fatty fish, and a lot of people take omega-3 supplements, but there are also omega-6 fats. And those are in like vegetable oils, canola oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, margarine. And we need both. Both are important, but there's like a healthy balance of the two types of fats. And the optimal balance would be the omega-6 being a 3 and the omega-3s being a 1. So a 3-to-1 ratio of the two. Now, most people's ratio, like just average folk with an average diet, Their ratio is 20-1.
Oh my goodness.
Right. Yeah.
20 omega-3s to 1 omega-6, or the other way?
The other way around. So
Okay.
they're taking in way more of the omega-6 than they optimally should. And the big reason is that we eat out more, right? We're not cooking in the home as much.
Mm-hmm.
And when we eat out more, foods are usually cooked in these vegetable canola oils or prepared in them, or like, think of like fast food and like how they're stored and stuff like that. And how they're cooked. It's cooked in that kind of oil typically for most restaurants and fast food. So, and then just store-bought food as well. So if you read the packaging, a lot of when I learned this, I was trying to implement some of this stuff in my diet, even though I'm not trying to conceive, but it's just good to reduce inflammation for everyone, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to make something that had a pesto sauce, and I wanted to buy a pesto sauce. I could not find one that didn't have sunflower or vegetable or canola oil. And most people who are traditionally making it at home, like if you read a recipe, usually they're using olive oil.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's like, for storage or shelf life or what,
Right.
but, or price, but a lot of store-bought things are using that base for their oils. So when we have this imbalance to that ratio, that also causes inflammation in the body. So that's a pretty simple thing to try to change, right? Like when you're buying something, trying to actually look on the back and seeing what kind of oil is used, and trying to lean more into those olive oils and avocado oils, are generally better than they're not better. I'm just saying the ratio, right? Because we usually are much higher than we need to be in the omega-6s. So that's something to consider as well. And then let's see. Another thing would be when I was talking about how certain foods are inflammatory to them, like with the dairy, but also with gluten. And I'm not saying gluten is bad for everyone, but what was interesting that I found out was that sometimes that this is the first sign for someone to get diagnosed with celiac or gluten intolerance is infertility. They're not able to conceive, or they're having difficulty to conceive, and they do all this testing and they find out that they have celiac and a gluten intolerance. So that's just something to consider if you're if you know that you have a gluten intolerance or celiac, then trying to reduce or avoid gluten in your diet. Yeah. And that will be helpful in conceiving. But maybe you don't know that. And this is just how you've always been, right? You don't know what you don't know. And then maybe you're like, okay, we've tried all the things. Maybe I'm going to eat gluten-free for a few months and see if that makes a difference. And maybe it would for you, or get tested for celiac.
Yeah.
Have you met anyone that has experienced that before with like the celiac or gluten?
So I wish I had it with me because I would show it to you, but we have this book called It Starts with the Egg, and I'm sure that at some point it'll come up for you because, nutrition and everything, and there's so much about there, like supplements, and it's wonderful. But in there, she has this whole section about celiac and infertility and recurrent pregnancy loss, and I read that and I was like blown away. We have some people that we know that were diagnosed with celiac later on in life, but this person had years of infertility and years of miscarriages. And if she would have had a diagnosis sooner, all that heartbreak and all that loss probably could have been avoided.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, you don't know until you know.
Right.
Exactly. But it's the more I'm learning and the more that I've learned in our own infertility journey about nutrition and just how important it is and how like vital it is to the journey, the more I'm like, why doesn't everybody know this?
You find that, like, because you're part of this like fertility community, do you find that many people that are on this fertility journey that they're very hyper aware of nutrition and diet, or is it kind of like a mix, or what have you experienced with that?
So personally, I know that when we started our journey and after I got my infertility diagnosis, I was like, I'm going to do absolutely everything that I can to get this under control. I'm going to look up everything that I can do. And nutrition was a big part of that. So, but the thing that really helped was that book that I mentioned, It Starts with the Egg, because she goes in there and she talks about, those healthy fats and whole grains and, having brightly colored fruits and vegetables and, just you're being careful about where you're getting your protein sources. And yeah, that was a huge thing for me. And I've noticed in the infertility community, I feel like it's really half and half. I feel like you've got half of the people that are kind of in that maverick stage, like, I'm going to do absolutely everything that I can to take control of my fertility. And a lot of that does include nutrition.
Right.
And then the other half of people I've noticed are just kind of like, oh, I have this infertility diagnosis and I'm just going to go straight into treatment, which I have no room to judge that because everybody's path is so different, but it is interesting to see how different people react to that diagnosis.
Right. Yeah. So. And I wonder if, like, knowledge is power, right? So hopefully something like this, maybe it would inspire someone to make, maybe not like go in like, like a cannonball into the pool, right? But maybe they dip their toes in and maybe they start making some small changes, which is just good for not just for fertility, but just for our health. Like, I've started implementing a lot of these things just in the last few months, just from not being as aware from before. So yeah. Okay. And then, so I talked about fats, and then was also going to mention, there are like a couple of other things, like just trying to limit refined sugars in general, trying to avoid or limit as many sugary, pastries and candies and desserts and things like that. And so that can be helpful in this journey as well. Soft drinks is another one. So there was a study that showed that women that drink soft drinks regularly, 50% of them were, or they were 50% more likely to experience subfertility, which is, interesting. And it also affected sperm and semen as well. So something to consider. And maybe it's that sugar aspect, right? And maybe we just don't know enough about, maybe there hasn't been like a study that says this is exactly why, that's the case.
Yeah.
And then same thing for fast food. So those who ate fast food regularly, their time from trying to conceive to conception was about twice as long on average.
That's crazy.
I know. That's huge. Man. It's not like, 5% or 10%, like twice as long.
Amount. Yeah.
And, that's one of those like lifestyle things that, can, if that's part of your lifestyle where you eat out frequently, it's just trying to make these small gradual changes. That's when it's going to be more effective and long lasting versus being like, you can't go out to eat anymore ever again. Then some people, if they heard that, they would go, well, I'm not going to do that. Right? That doesn't work for my lifestyle. So I guess that's not something I'm going to be able to do. Instead, maybe saying, okay, how many times do I actually go to fast food a week? Can I reduce that by a couple of times, and then kind of try to reduce that over time. Or what are you ordering at the fast food? Are there some options that you can, change on there that would be maybe a little bit on the fitting these criteria? Is it possible? Or where are you going? Could you choose something a little bit different instead of McDonald's, maybe, I don't know, a sandwich shop or something like that.
Or like a Zupas or something.
Yeah. Oh, I love Zupas.
Me
It's so
too.
good. It's so good. So it's just something to consider. And then what was the other thing I was going to say? Okay. Another thing is gut health. So our gut microbiome. So we have good bacteria covering our whole entire bodies and inside of our bodies that are really good for our immune system and our overall health. Mm-hmm. And we want those there, and we want that to be flourishing and working and, to be there. And so we have, especially in our gastrointestinal tract, we've got it's like its own environment, its own biome. And if that is not working optimally, or it's, depleted, it can affect our overall health. But also our gut biome is pretty close to our reproductive biome. They're close to each other, like externally. And so they usually are pretty like linked to each other. So if you have a very healthy gut biome, we can assume that your reproductive biome is healthy as well, and vice versa. So trying to support a healthy gut, and that can be, we can see that there's been lots of studies that those who have this healthy gut, they have improved fertility, lower rates of miscarriages, higher IVF success, better hormone health. So it's just good overall. We can see this link between the two.
Yeah. And
so first off, we want to reduce or eliminate things that are harmful to this microbiome. So like those inflammatory things that we were talking about, if you're eating foods that cause you to have diarrhea frequently or nausea, vomiting, that's probably not great for your gut health. And then also like the way that our foods are cooked, or the kinds of things they're cooked in, like BPAs and how do you say it? The phthalates. I always say it wrong.
Phthalates?
Phthalates, yes.
Yeah. It's okay.
I have this moment like when I've heard it and when I read it, and they don't match up. You know?
You're like, I don't feel like it's supposed to be spelled like
right,
that.
but it is right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Phthalates. So trying to, use utensils and cookware and, storing your foods that are BPA free and phthalate free, if possible.
So what would that look like for somebody?
So you can always check, it usually always says on there, but a lot of things that are BPA free, which is great, but what they're replacing the BPA with, we don't know. Maybe that could also be harmful as well. Mm-hmm. We just don't know, right? Yeah. It just hasn't been studied yet, but it's possible that could also be harmful. So trying to avoid plastics is one of the easiest way to do that. So like storing your foods in glass, mason jars or glass containers, and just trying, and this is a big one. I haven't done it completely in my home yet. I mean, I would love to eventually, but it's kind of one of those things where I don't want to spend a ton of money and replacing everything, right? Yeah. So it's like, okay, when I'm ready to buy a new something, I'm going to replace it with a glass version or something like that. Or like when you buy pots and pans, the non-stick stuff, that has lots of chemicals and treatments in it that maybe not, it includes some of these things. Mm-hmm. So it can be this slow, gradual thing. Or like you said, if you're like a, a maverick just jumping into the pool full force than doing it all at once.
Yeah.
So those things, if you work on reducing these things, that's going to be helpful for your gut health. And then can we add in some really supportive gut healthy foods like bone broth, homemade bone broth, or let's see, fermented veggies like kimchi, kefir, yogurt, miso, apple cider vinegar. Those are some great options.
Yeah.
You don't want to it's not like you want to all of a sudden add in a ton of this all at once, because that can be kind of harsh.
I did that.
GI system, and could cause a lot of diarrhea, this kind of period, a transitional period. So you might want to just kind of add slow, just a little bit at a time, and kind of work up to having these regularly in your diet. And that's why this is so great to implement it before you're pregnant, right? Because this is helpful for pregnancy as well.
Yeah.
But we don't want you to be having diarrhea from adding these foods in when you're pregnant. Nobody wants that, but if it's going to happen, we really don't want that to happen in pregnancy. If you're having diarrhea every day, all day long, that's not good for you or the baby.
Yeah.
And then there are some prebiotic foods as well. So foods that help to feed those probiotics and keep them flourishing well. And that would be foods like garlic, onion, asparagus, beets, and artichokes are also really good. And just trying to eat more of a variety of vegetables. Do you only eat the same 4 vegetables? That's it. Those are your vegetables that you're comfortable with, that you like, how to cook them. And so you just always eat them. Versus, can we add in more of a variety? Because where these vegetables are grown and how they're grown, and there's bacteria on them. And so that's going to introduce more of a variety of healthy bacteria into our diet. And then lastly would be progesterone. So we know that this hormone is crucial for fertility, for conception, for maintaining the pregnancy. It sustains the pregnancy until week 17 to 20 when the placenta takes over. So if we have really low progesterone levels, that's where we see higher rates of early pregnancy loss. So we would like to, keep this progesterone at a healthy level. It also is really important in uterine receptivity and the health of the endometrium. So the implantation of the embryo. So what affects the progesterone is egg health. So most of the progesterone comes from the corpus luteum, which is part of the egg. And so if we're starting with an egg that's low quality, or it's just not a healthy egg, we're probably not going to have great progesterone levels for that. So if we can start with a really healthy egg, which doing all the things that we talked about earlier is going to promote healthy eggs. And then antioxidants. So trying to reduce the oxidative stress in the body. So, oxidation is this, it's normal, but it's this breakdown of our cells, right? And so we can eat foods that are high in antioxidants that will be protective against this. And foods that would be like blueberries, lots of fresh fruits and vegetables. And then mostly vegetables and fruits. Anything with a vibrant color is usually pretty rich in antioxidants. So trying to work some of those in if you can, and then anti-inflammatory foods. So we talked about this inflammatory process that can happen in the body. And maybe, we try to prevent it from happening altogether, but it's just part of life. Sometimes we get a little bit of inflammation, but are there foods that we can eat that can reduce that inflammation? And that would be things like berries, ginger, bell pepper, broccoli, salmon, walnuts, flax, kale, olive oil, and cinnamon those are all really protective. And then let's see, blood sugar balance, again, is going to be helpful for that. And then making sure you're eating enough fat. And this is a hard one because
I know,
because like when we were growing up, I mean, I don't know how old you are, but I'm just assuming, when I was growing up and learning about nutrition as a kid, it was always like, fat is bad, right?
Yep.
And so then we have introduced these like low fat foods or margarines and the vegetable oils and things like that because they're lower in calories. But those fats, those other fats are actually really good for us. Even the cholesterol, as a nurse, in nursing school, it was like, cholesterol is really bad, right? But actually, I mean, it's just, we don't want super duper high cholesterol. That's not good for your circulatory system, but cholesterol is important in fertility.
Yeah.
That is very important. It's responsible for making hormones. So if we're not eating any animal fats or proteins or getting cholesterol from anywhere, that could affect our hormone, productivity. So if you regularly eat these like low fat products, like yogurt, for instance, do you buy the non-fat or the low fat or the 1%? Can we switch that out for a full fat option?
Yeah.
Or our, milks and things like that as well. And so you can try to make a purposeful effort to increase the fat at each meal. So can we add a little bit of butter, a little to what you're cooking, or coconut oil, or adding in eggs to, stir fry or something like that. Or if you're having a salad, can you add an extra drizzle of olive oil on top of that salad? Or nuts and seeds and things like that as well. So yeah, that would be my spiel, I would say.
I love it. You are so knowledgeable and you're so informative. I love talking to you. I remember I made avocado toast right before our egg retrieval, and I did like eggplant. So I had sourdough, and then I had like an eggplant red pepper spread on it. And then I did my avocado, and then I did chia seeds, and then I did like microgreens, and then I did like a sprinkle of olive oil on top of that.
Oh my gosh.
And my husband was
so good.
It was so good. It was so good. But my husband was like, that's a lot of fat on there. And I was like, it's good fat.
Yes, so exactly. Fine. It's good fat. And and that's good for you, and that's good for your eggs, and it's good for your hormones. It's all good. It's like most of these things, it's like, it's all about moderation, right? It's like if you're eating a steak, every single day, then, over 30 years, that could maybe be harmful to your vessels and your heart, right? Yeah. But how you were eating it, that is completely different, right? Yeah, I've been on this journey with this class and this information. It's not like I was completely ignorant. I just didn't have like specific ways to actually implement it, or like what I knew was more vague versus like, how do I actually eat like that?
Yeah.
Because I didn't grow up per se eating like that. So I didn't know how to cook like that or shop like that, or how to be more intentional about what I put on my toast or my salad and things like that. So been really helpful for me too. I'm really into hemp seeds right now.
I love that. Okay. Tell me about that.
It's hemp seeds, and they're very high in protein and omega fats. And so you can put them, they're like almost like flavorless. It kind of looks like breadcrumbs.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'll do like toast with nut butter and sprinkle hemp seeds on top. Or if I'm making a smoothie, put a couple tablespoons of hemp seeds. Or if I make a salad, sprinkling that on top, and you get this like kind of like breadcrumby, like croutonish texture.
Yeah. And it could totally take the place of the crouton, which is kind of cool.
Exactly. Like I put it on a Caesar salad, and it kind of gives you that vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel really good about it. I'm pumping up that protein source and omega-3s and fiber and all of those things. So that's an easy little add in as well.
Mm-hmm. That's how I felt about chia seeds and microgreens, because I just like throw them in everything.
Yeah, totally. Have you done the chia seed pudding?
Yes. It is so yummy. You can make it so many different ways.
I really wanted to like it because I was like, this is going to be so good for me. I'm going to eat it every morning for breakfast. And it's just so easy. I can prep it, all of that. And the texture, I can't get behind.
Okay.
So it was not the right texture for me.
That's okay.
But the teacher, Lindsay Taylor, who I did this program through, she mentioned you could make like a jar of chia seeds. And then if you were having a yogurt parfait or whatever, Greek yogurt, nuts, berries, add a spoonful of chia seeds, and mixed in with your yogurt, it probably would be more tolerable. Or adding a tablespoon into your smoothie that you're already making. So I've been doing that to try to work in more of those.
That's the texture is like I know.
It's like gelatinous,
It really is. There's nothing quite like it.
Like some people, I'm very texture sensitive. So I'm more of like, I love crunch. So that's like the exact opposite of that, like even with yogurt, I can't just eat a bowl of yogurt. I have to have apples or berries and nuts and seeds on it, because otherwise it's just not enough for me.
And that's okay. That's okay. But I mean, it sounds like you hacked it with the with the hemp seeds. Yeah. But you can do the same thing with chia seeds, get like a spoonful, just put it on top of your salad, just throw it in your omelets and
totally. Or
yogurt. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So many great little tips. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you were mentioning cast iron, or not cast iron, that's what I was going to mention. When you were mentioning nonstick, the first thing I did when I heard that nonstick was actually really toxic and that it's not good for you, I was looking up different cookware things, and stainless steel and cast iron seem to be like the best. So we got rid of all of our nonstick pans, and now we just cook on our cast iron, and I actually really love it. It's a lot easier to take care of than I thought it was going to be. And that's a good, easy switch. Easy switch,
right. And then once you do it, you're not thinking about it. It's just like change that you've made that now you're taking in less of these, chemicals into your body. My husband, he bought a stainless steel set a few years ago. And I mean, it was not really that intentional. It was just like they were on sale or something.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't like we were meaning to switch anything out. It was just like, oh, let's get these. And so I'm really happy that he ended up picking those out. The only thing is that they're very heavy. And same thing with cast iron.
Cast iron is heavy.
Sometimes I roasted a chicken and I was like, I can't get this thing out of the oven.
No, not with a chicken.
I'm like, honey, I need help. I'm glad he was home. Just because I don't know. It's just like, I have weak wrists or something. But yeah, those are very simple and easy changes that you can make. And with all of these things, it can be very overwhelming to be like, I can't do anything that I already do. Like, I have to make all of these changes. I have to buy all these things. I don't know if I can do that, and so that overwhelm might cause some people to just not do it, right?
Yeah.
They're like, forget it. I can't. There's no way. But instead, just choosing one thing to change. And then maybe after a few weeks, you're like, that was easy. Now I'm not even thinking about that, And then now I'm going to choose one other little thing to change, and just, slow, gradual change. It doesn't have to be this huge life, now I'm living completely differently from one day to the next, because that's just not realistic. I mean, that's, for most people, that's not realistic.
And it's hard. It's hard to, I was that way when we first started and I learned about all this stuff. I was like, okay, that's it. We got to get rid of all of our plastics. We got to switch our cookware. We got to do all of the things. And it was really overwhelming. And I wish I would have just seen that, one change at a time is still change, and it's still going to make a positive impact. And it doesn't have to be everything all at once.
Yes. And then also, like, you got to have whoever you live with, has to be kind of on board and supportive of these changes, right? Like, like for me, I don't have this specific goal in mind per se. Like, I'm not having another baby or trying to conceive or things like that. So I'm just like, okay, I'm making these gradual changes in my diet and, trying to reduce dyes in my kids' diet and things like that. And my husband sometimes is like, but why? Like,
I'm laughing because my husband's the same way. He's been so supportive, but he like questions everything that I do. And I'm like, look, here's all the science. Like, just look at that. It's fine.
Part of me just wants to be like, just do it, but especially with the dyes, like, he's like, they're everywhere. They're unavoidable. That's his mindset. And I'm like, that's not, there are lots of people that are able to at least reduce, how much dyes you're taking in. At least in the home, maybe when we go out, or maybe if they're at a friend's house or at school, the group snack or whatever, I'm not going to worry. But like, at home, what I'm putting in their lunch boxes or what I'm putting in front of them on my table, like, I want to make this change,
and it's still going to make a difference. I mean, even if it is just at home, it's still going to make a difference.
Exactly. So anyways, that's kind of, I segued off of the topic.
It's okay.
So my point was that, sometimes I'm having to kind of convince him to get on board with that. But he'll get there.
And I feel like when it comes to infertility, I mean, your partner wants a baby just as much as you do. So I feel like if something's important to you, they're going to be able to see that, and they're going to want to make that change with you because, I mean, they love you and they want this baby with you. And if, you got to be a team. And I feel like a lot of men, if you talk to them, they'll be a little bit more on board and a little bit more supportive.
Right. If you just all of a sudden say you're not allowed to do this or buy this or we're not getting this anymore. But if you can explain to them, your reasoning and why it's important to you. And, sometimes some guys want proof, if you got to pull up the article or whatever, but but sometimes it's just saying, hey, this is important to me and I need you to do this for me. And most men would do that in a heartbeat. Right.
Speaking of men, do you have any nutritional advice when it comes to men, when it comes to sperm health? They have it a little bit easier because, I mean, every 3 months they're, the reproductive system kind of like resets itself and they have new sperm and they have more, I feel like, opportunity to have better turnover on their health, if that makes sense.
No, it does. But with this, it was more focused on the woman's perspective, but they did say that basically all this applies to the man and their sperm as well. All of these things are important for them as well. Like if there's a lot of inflammation in his body, then his sperm is going to not be as high of quality. So it's all applicable. We're trying to reduce inflammation, reduce, the oxidative stress in the body. So I don't have anything specific though. I mean, I've heard things, but I don't have anything like from this class or from that's like legit, basically.
Yeah. But, just saying that it all applies to both partners, I think that's plenty. And I think
right. And then that's going to be helpful, for you to actually implement these changes too, is if you guys are doing it together.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of holding each other accountable and things like that.
And you're working towards a common goal. And this, I mean, if you're both doing it, then it feels like you're more of a together in the process. And that makes a big difference. Yeah.
We're trying to add another player to the team. So
yeah. I love that.
Trying to recruit.
That's adorable. Do you have anything else that you want to add or anything else that you want to say? I think it's been awesome. I love talking to you. You are so knowledgeable.
Oh, thank you.
And you're so sweet.
I appreciate you having me on, especially since this is a newer, thing for me. But it doesn't make it less valid that it's newer to me. Right. So I really appreciate you, trusting me and having me on to your podcast. I've had a really great time.
Really, thank you for being here. I have had the best time talking to you, and I'm so glad that I got to talk to you 2 weeks in a row.
I know. We're like BFFs now.
I know. I'm going to be asking you for updates on your kids, and next time I'm up in Idaho, I'll be like, "Hey, girl."
Yeah. Well, you're in Utah, so that's not even that far. What part of Utah are you in?
So we're in the Roy area. So Weber County, Ogden.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
If you're ever in Idaho, look me up. If we're ever in Utah, I'll send you a message.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I would love that. I just adore you. You've been so awesome.
Thank you. Thanks, Mariah.
Yeah.